It's me, Time Agent Brendan. You may recognize me from the Sense Sphere. Hiya, friends. Hello. Well, welcome to this new iteration of Sense Sphere. This is Time Agent Brendan at your service on secondment from the main orbit of the Sense Sphere debates and news shows. My mission to decode, to decipher, find clues, build a bigger picture for our global agents out there who have been busy working. My aim is not to let things go unchecked or unquestioned. I also aim to make concise, snappy programs if possible to absorb the many messages that I'm tracking and locking onto. And I need to be fast because people will be locking onto me if they don't like my messaging. So welcome to the Sense Sphere Saloon. I will change my downtown location from time to time. And of course, today my top secret mission is to decode Russell T Davies's Doctor Who plans. Yep, you're going to find me out and about. Click on those notifications. Click on subscribe because I will be reporting the news when I can. So let's be clear. If you want more deciphered, encrypted messages from Sense Sphere Saloon, a downtown meeting place, no one will find me. Press for notifications, click on likes, and do please subscribe. An agent does not live on fresh air and a pint at tea time. So join our band of Sense Sphere agents and please subscribe. Okay, so I think it's time we need to get on with this, isn't it? RTD, what are his plans? Well, where do we start? Well, I think it's best to start with evidence one. So let me just set myself up so I can show you exactly what I mean. Okay, so if I just take you through, I'm just advertising there. We've done a show on him recently, so please look that up. So there's evidence from there, but I've accumulated an awful lot of evidence, and a lot of it is from here. You really do need to check this out, folks. The documentary and our review of it, because he said things in that November documentary that would actually add a lot of sequences and clues together for now. So let's have a greater look at what he actually did say during that period. Okay, so he had a good chat. It was all about his life, Russell T Davies, and everything. Now, you know, on my Sunday show the other day, I looked at this kind of element of his interview when he said that actually he didn't have ambition for the series to be on it for ages. He just wanted to write a few specials. Okay. But then he saw the dollar signs, so to speak. He was ambushed, he says. They sprung a trap on me, and suddenly he's in it for years and years and years. And if you look on the right-hand side, he said it was music to my ears, and suddenly he was swirling with new ideas. And we know we'll talk about the fantasy element in a moment. But basically, he went in it to just bring Tate and Tennant back, and he's now decided to stay. So suddenly, a man who had no ideas for Doctor Who suddenly has loads. Genius, isn't it? It's amazing how somebody with no ambition suddenly handbrake turn, suddenly I've got loads. But now we join some of the dots together as we go through this, because if you look in green there, after the award winning It's a Sin, he says, okay, I can do whatever I want. People were telling me I can do what I want. Then I decided I'm going back to Doctor Who. And this is when I'm going to start to maybe concern you about some of the things that have been said. So go back to that Russell T Davies documentary, and there's your Bad Wolf executive team, the people who are supposed to be putting checks and balances on him. Okay, so every writer's allowed opinions. Every writer is allowed to, to put their political viewpoints. Sometimes, I mean, you can go from H.G. Wells onwards. However, look at these people who are supposed to keep him in check. They said it's like a howl of rage at the modern world is RTD, years and years, It's a Sin. And then they say he's a showman, so he's a bit like J&T. And on the other hand, he's as dark as the pits of hell because he sees the darkness in humanity, says Julie Gardner. And Jane Tranter joined in. So they're not going to challenge his anger, his belligerence, his political messaging, it seems to me. Am I trying to find trouble when there's not trouble? Well, let's add up more clues. So let's look at, this is like a character witness, isn't it? In court, you get character witnesses, and actually they speak a lot. So David Tennant, one of our doctors, in fact, two of our doctors, he said, Russell Davies now, it's like he's taken the guardrails off. And I think he wouldn't have done it before like this. So basically, we've got RTD did not think he was going to come back for more than the specials. He then heard that they were going to be streaming and they wanted to go global, and BBC had ambitions. So he suddenly has ambitions himself. And suddenly you've got a man who's got a political vent with no checks and balances from the other executive producers, who even from one of the actors who's worked for him say this is RTD with the guardrails off. And then you've got a Guardian journalist who in the documentary discussed RTD and his success with Years and Years and It's a Sin. And she's a Doctor Who fan, and she then started saying this. Imagine now being able to be this political. He can see now the power TV has when it's done properly, and then being this influential again back on Doctor Who. So I'm saying to everybody, while we're talking about what are the future plans for season 1, 2, and possibly 3 with Russell Davies and Ncuti Gatwa, well, clearly this is seen now as I can ambush a Doctor Who program. Unlike before in 2005, I can actually now use it as a platform. So I'm adding the clues together. It doesn't sound so anybody seems to think there's going to be any checks and balances. And she goes on. It's the most incredible power because you've got all of time and space, but it's a kid's show. And that's the power of it. It's the best toy set you can have. And you've got that generation to be part of a new belief system. So here we go. The man who had no ambition to really return to Doctor Who, he says, then he was going to just write the 3 specials around the 60th, then gets his head turned maybe by big budget, big ambition, whatever. And now the people around him and the people who know him in the media and close to him are saying he's angry, are saying he's got political messaging. He can see how the program can be used as a toy for political messaging. And then we continue with the man himself. Obviously, this has to be decent evidence, surely. And when Russell Davies was talking in this documentary, he referred to his successful career as folk. But actually, when you look at Queer as Folk now, it's problematic, isn't it? But he references it in an innocent way. He says, to make that character was for a 15-year-old schoolboy so vital, and going down Canal Street and coming out there, now it will be a trans character walking down Canal Street. Right. Okay. Well, there's an awful lot of debate in this country from Cast Report onwards where this is not a settled issue. And so you've got, again, somebody who feels unchecked and with a children's family drama thinks he can actually carry a very strong, controversial political message. So remember, am I finding clues here that are there? If I was picking on one, you could maybe say, Brendan, time agent, back off. But really, look at this. There's an awful lot of evidence I'm adding up here. He can see, he said his mind was whirling when he could see what he could do with this show, when he hadn't had any consideration earlier. So let's go further then. He obviously has plans for the political messaging. And as you can see here, and this is from the Star Beast Unleashed, the transcript is him in blue, him saying that Rose, as we know that character, is he and she and neither and both. And he goes on about visibility. I understand that. There is homophobia, there is transphobia. I understand, and that's wrong. But then he starts to talk about visibility and having characters in his programs. And he says, maybe naively, maybe idealistically, maybe laudably, maybe very politically, that if you normalize these characters, they become part of the world. People are less stressed. You don't freak, you don't react, and basically you make a better world. That sounds very worthy on the surface of it. But when you're adding all these other clues together, that he's now a man who can see Doctor Who as a toy, who can see it as a political platform, you do. And remember that reference he said when he says, I can do what I want now. You do start to ask a few questions. Now, we don't just stop there. Am I just finding 1 or 2 clues, or are there a few more here that I really want to join together all at once? We mentioned in our Sunday show recently about how Ncuti Gatwa, actually his idea was to have 1 costume. But when he sat down with the costume designer, Pam Down, obviously following orders from above, we can only conclude, he saw kilts, skirts, and all kinds of gender-pushing, societal-pushing outfits. And as I said, the repetition of that pushing, why are we wanting with our main character in our kind of recovery period for Doctor Who, wanting to be pushing society, challenging and provoking society, pushing what is gender conformity in a Doctor Who program that's been on its backside. Why? Because this is the man who said he can't, he can do no wrong. He can do what he wants. And I've just shown you that the Bad Wolf team aren't going to pull him back. They're in awe of him. I've just shown you that David Tennant said the guardrails are off. I've shown you character witnesses. I've shown you RTD himself saying that he really would want a trans character now, going down Canal Street, age 15. You know that I'm not going there, but the press and the cast report are saying that is more problematic than he is making out. And of course, that queer as folk 15-year-old schoolboy going out with and sleeping with an adult man is actually highly illegal. So we've got problematic messaging, which they're all admitting to pushing. And of course, we've seen some of the examples of costumes he's going to have in the series, and you can make your own mind up whether just looking at the picture, don't be triggered, let's not be triggered, but add it to the clues I've just pointed out. We've never seen a doctor in a nightclub dancing before. Don't get triggered, Brendan. What does that mean? Add it to what I've just said, and obviously we might be going in a certain direction. What's your hunch then, Brendan? Because honestly, I don't think you've sealed the deal yet. Okay, then, let's seal the deal. Let's look further. Russell Davies has actually made more of this, hasn't he? He's actually discussed this. Hello. Ncuti Gatwa teases the gayest doctor ever. Lots of people will feel seen and represented. That idea of visibility that he mentioned in Star Beast Unleashed. The key actor in the new series, trying to recover the series, is actually calling it out as the gayest doctor ever. Now, I can tell you that superlative could mean not gay. It could mean most flamboyant. It could mean a couple of other things. It's not as literal as that. However, look at the clues and where we are going. And obviously, Ncuti has been saying various things recently. So it seems to me we've got an angry, belligerent showrunner with no checks and balances, who might be motivated by idealism, might be motivated by politics, but he certainly has no problem being political and provocative anymore. He has no problem with it. So his ambition is high on the culture wars. And nobody has stopped him changing canon. So in one of my recent Dalek Doomsday shows, please check it out, we did obviously discuss the Davos Gate, like every stream has worth their salt. And of course, in there, as you can see, he discussed the wheelchair association with evil that he can't stand, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, we are absolutely standing by it. And as you know, when people tweeted him and tried to explain, blah, 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 what did he say? Tough. So we've got a man who says, I can do no wrong. Nobody is going to stop him. None of the executive team. People around him who've worked with him say he's got the guardrails off and he really seems to be, unhindered now. And he is sticking by his decision. This is no custodian of Doctor Who. This is challenging Doctor Who. And any inconsistency with Doctor Who canon, I don't care. These are my rules now. This is a very different iteration. So hopefully some of the clues here have given you some food for thought. And then, of course, in a recent interview, he talked about a very controversial canon change. Nobody sits on the fence when it comes to timeless children. You're either for it or against it. And I know an awful lot of people who are against it. So he says it's going to be the spine of the whole show in the next 2 series. That whole spine of the show. He goes into detail saying, for example, that Millie Gibson's character, she's the foundling. And of course, he actually also mentions in the interview that Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor now has no parents and has just recently found out that he's a foundling. Well, I'm sorry, but yes, in the Chris Chibnall script, that's what the Master said, but it's not proven. And it was done so shabbily that most people, when the program was really on its backside, thought this could be recovered, erased, changed cleverly by a skillful writer called Russell T Davies. So some of us cheered him coming back. And now look at him. I can do no wrong. I stick with my friends. Nobody's going to stop me. I've changed Davros. I've got a political agenda, and you're going to see it in the series, and we have. And I'm going to continue on that vent. So never mind, we're starting again. And remember, what did he just say yesterday? He was talking about, we don't on the program want to talk about we don't want to talk about the old series and the old Doctors. We have a rule at the moment, and I understand that in a way. We're moving forward. Well, you're moving forward by bringing Mel Bush back. You're moving forward by messing on with bi-generation and the generation sequence, playing with something from the past. You are wanting to move forward by bringing David Tennant and Donna Noble back. Really, really, really? You only want to move forward and never discuss the old series, but you'll bring the toy maker back. Sorry, this is inconsistent, but it just shows you that at the moment, what he says goes and is allowed, and nobody is challenging it. So, having had his success elsewhere with adult drama, worthy adult drama, he now says he's got an idea after saying, I'm only going to do 3 specials, and I'm going down the fantasy road. I'm going to go heavy on the fantasy road. Okay, then. So how does this all work? And of course, I mean, there's my example of the Foundling example that he said earlier. Yeah. Wild Blue Yonder. I love the salt because now we can have a fantasy and not have to explain things, basically, is what's going on here. And this is my problem with fantasy. I was for 30 years an English teacher. I like some fantasy. I like sci-fi. I like various, genres of fiction. But I have to say, with my cynical teaching head on, sometimes when people say it's fantasy, it's kind of shorthand. This is not Tolkien. This is not The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, where, on the inner sleeve, you'd see a whole world mapped out. The fantasy writer, had actually plotted everything. So within fantasy, there was a logic and a sense. And within that world, you cannot break the rules of that world. So in other words, you could invest in it and enjoy it because that world had set boundaries, and you can't just suddenly have a sledgehammer that whacks out a new TARDIS. You suddenly can't just do bi-generation just because you want to do it for the fun of it. And this is my problem. The man who's out of control, the man who can do no wrong, the man who's got no checks and balances, the man who's got a political message, has now invented the great convenience, the great contrivance that some salt thrown on the floor to kind of befuddle the strange aliens in Wild Blue Yonder suddenly has opened up this whole casket for him to actually break every single rule in Doctor Who. That's not what fantasy writers do. And of course, in that documentary I've referenced a few times, go back to it. It's fascinating. He says to the interviewer, I've had a really good morning. So my head's in 2025 already, and about our series Climax 2025 and 2026, I know what's happening. So I'm trying to add up. 2024, we get season 1. 2025, we get season 2, and people are discussing Millie Gibson being part of that season 2 arc. And it's going to be devastating and all the rest of it. And then we've got 2026. That's season 3, isn't it? So, we have gossip about whether Disney are hanging around. We've got gossip about whether Shooty's doing season 3. RTD looks as though he's doing season 3. So this man, with no controls and balances and a strong political message, he's going to be hanging around. And I actually looked in one of our shows recently at all the shows he's actually written in Doctor Who, and I tried to color code them regarding quality. Red are sometimes the big ones, like Journey's End and Stolen Earth, very, very dramatic. The green ones, I think, are quite classy. Turn Left, Waters of Mars and Midnight. Then you get a few kind of in the middle, so to speak. But actually, when you look back at all the stories he's written in Doctor Who, has he written consistently a lot of good Doctor Who? Or have we got a man who's now made up this idea that I'm going to do fantasy in Doctor Who to give me a get out of jail card to do what the hell I want and nobody can challenge me? Davros, you can't do that. Sorry, tough. do it my way. This man now is going to change all the rules of Doctor Who without any challenge. And I can because of salt and fantasy. And this is a big problem, isn't it? Because Doctor Who could radically change the Doctor's character, costume, persona, the rules of the game in Doctor Who. I mean, what is off territory? The bi-generation, what was that really? I mean, come on, what was that? It made no sense on so many levels. Why one Doctor remained in trousers, one didn't? You can go to that peripheral, frothy material. You can then go into the series. It's a myth, and now it's a reality. So there's an awful lot of things I'm not happy with, because I fear when people say fantasy nowadays, they're not saying I'm a quality Tolkien writer. What they're saying is it's shorthand for I can get away with stuff. It's a shorthand for that. And so, for example, there's one of your best examples of that. I'll put it on the big screen. Bringing the toy maker back so that I can have this whole other universe. Remember what he said in that kind of Unleashed, when he said, I think all the Doctors come back to life. That's the gift of the toy maker. They're all in individual TARDISes. And so now he's kind of let loose on the Doctor Who universe. And then, of course, that I have to say, I cannot deal with this. Where does this fit into reality of Doctor Who? A sledgehammer to create a second TARDIS. So you've got a man now who thinks, well, it's fantasy, so don't question me. Sorry, it's fantasy. I do what I want. And so we get this problem. And as I said earlier, he says it's all about looking forward, yet he's used the toy maker. He's brought Mel Bush back. He's using UNIT. How far do I go with this? The spin-off series is using the Sea Devils. What? He's only looking forward? Well, yeah, you decide when you're looking forward and when you're looking back on where you're taking the series quite clearly. So my concern here is when you join all the dots together, when you really consider what RTD is doing, we've got a belligerent man, a man on a mission with an agenda, a pushing agenda. What did it say about costumes? Who's happy to court controversy. I can do whatever I want. Who's going to use Doctor Who to push that agenda, to change opinions, to indoctrinate. What did that Guardian writer say about what he could do with Doctor Who and the younger generation? He knows Chris Chibnall and the Timeless Children was controversial, but he's embracing it because nobody can stop him now. So I'm sticking with my pals. So anybody who's trying to give him a chance, please look at the clues. I've just killed our little walkie there. He's supposed to be listening to me as if we're in the pub. Jane T used to get hurt by fan criticism. RTD just seems to get emboldened by it. Absolutely emboldened by it. So we have a problematic situation, surely. I don't want to sound grim, but I'm just showing you the facts, as the time agent Brendan intends to do in this Sense Sphere Saloon. I think RTD, as a Doctor Who agent, has gone rogue, and we must keep a close watching brief on him. Please write to me with any clues that you find, with any interviews or anything. You know where to find me on Facebook, Twitter, etc. So my mission is to decipher, and I have to terminate that mission now because I have to make sure I don't get found on this encrypted message. So it's time to vacate this location before I am spotted. So please click on the notification, subscribe, so you know when I next send another encrypted message from some downtown saloon bar somewhere. So please stay safe, stay vigilant, stay true to Doctor Who. Time Agent Brendan is signing off.